In Herman Melville's classic Moby Dick, the author makes a contrast between Captain Ahab and a cannibalistic pagan named Queequeg. Ahab, consumed with revenge, is a strict and mean-spirited man. Queequeg, a chief among his people, is kind and encouraging. Melville juxtaposes the meanness of Abraham against the loving kindness of Queequeg. In a certain sense, both men are leaders. One, top-down leadership, while the other one leads from within. Ahab exercises his leadership by tearing down and finding fault with his crew. Queequeg by offering support, encouragement, and friendship. Ahab's style of leadership ultimately leads to disaster. Queequeg leads to loyalty and friendship. There's a real power in encouragement. God gives us this great grace to be able to encourage and support one another. And while it's true that we ought to pick our friends carefully, that doesn't mean that we are then to pick them to pieces. We've been called to build people up, not tear them down. Actually, St. Paul first points this out in 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 10, when he wrote, "The Lord has given me authority that I might build up, not tear down." I don't think I've met anyone who was as encouraging and tried to build you up like Bishop Don Hine. I miss that. Every time I was around him, I left him wanting to be more like that. Because, it's just not my gift. I'm always seeing what can be done to improve, and I often miss what's already done that's really good. I'm torn between getting things done and acknowledging that those around me are already doing such a great job. I confess this to you. It's not a really big secret, but I acknowledge this because my guess is a lot of you listening to my words this morning are more critical than you are encouraging. No matter what our natural disposition, we are called to build people up, not tear them down. And sometimes we have to fight our natural inclinations to become the person that God calls us to be. We had a bishop, I'm not going to tell you his name, but hardly ever a kind or encouraging word came from him. The only time the priest heard from him when he called to criticize. Pick on little insignificant details. A good leader is one who encourages and supports more than they criticize and tear down. If you're a parent, you're a leader. Husbands, listen to your words. Are you building up your wife and children, or are you tearing them down? Wives, do you nag and try to control your husband and children, or are you supporting and encouraging? Whenever someone calls me out for not being grateful or not being encouraging enough, I often push back because inside me, it feels like I am encouraging. And I can even point to many ways that I've tried to build up others. But when pressed against the wall of honesty, I have to admit that I can be better. I need to be better. And I bet that you can do better too. The Lord wants to give us the understanding to strengthen others. Our second reading today, also from 2 Corinthians, tells us to be more encouraging, to be more agreeable, less contrary, and to live in peace. I got to believe that all that starts in the domestic church, that is your home. First with your spouse, then with your children, and from there your kindness and encouragement spreads beyond your home. Life is full of little irritants. The people you live with are not, listen carefully if you don't know this already, they are not always going to do things the way you want them to be done or when you want them to be done. And our frustrations over such things can really begin to build up and get on our nerves. And when that happens, our words can be cutting. If you find that you're more likely to tear down and discourage than you are to build up and tear down and discourage than you are to build up and encourage, then here's some things that you might consider doing. First of all, know what you're feeling and why you're feeling it. It's really important. Take time to figure that out. If you're in a bad mood, it's not fair to beat everybody else up because of something that's going on inside of you. Stop and figure out why you're in a bad mood. Or at least announce to others, hey, I'm a real grump today, stay away. Give them notice of what's going on inside you. Even if you can't figure out what it is, you know that you're a grump, then say, I'm a grump today, please forgive me. Figure out what's eating you within. When you do that, it allows you not to chew up your wife and your children. Can we accept that there can be a creative use of conflict? Can we agree to disagree and still pull together? In the center of problems and heartaches, we can find great opportunities. Sit down in prayer. Ask God to help you see what He sees when He looks at your spouse and your children. Start making a list of things you love about them. And then hold that list in your mind. If you do that, the irritants about what your family members do or don't do, well, it just doesn't feel so pressing anymore. Pray. I mean, really pray that you're the type of family leader in your domestic church that encourages and builds up more than you criticize and tear down. In that prayer, if it's a really sincere prayer, you will realize that you can't do it. That's right, you're going to fail. I mean, even if you're able to do it today, chances are tomorrow it's going to slip away. And when you figure that out, that you have no power to sustain that level of encouragement, then you also realize how much you need God. And then your prayer turns to one of a cry for grace. Because only by grace can we live lives marked as people of encouragement, building one another up as God does for us. Actually, as you contemplate your domestic church, the community you and your family comprise, look to the perfect community of life and love that is characterized by the Holy Trinity. The love and encouragement between Father, Son, and Spirit should inform and transform us into individuals of encouragement. As St. Paul reminds us, encourage one another, agree with one another, live in peace with one another, and the God of love and peace will live with you. Let the church say,
Amen.